Hey guys, welcome back to JEB and Flow on the Street Parking Podcast channel. Good to have you here. Coming to you from the garage, which I'm still not 100% sure, but I am playing with the suggested name for the garage gym of The Quarry. But you have to really highlight the QU component, Quarry. The Quarry. Get it? Jebstone? Anyways, that's where we're coming to you from. And it's a cool little setup. I'm digging it. So what should we talk about today? So much stuff to talk about. So much stuff to not talk about. And how do I know if what I want to talk about is the right thing that I should be talking about right now? I don't. So let's talk about that. Perfection or imperfection. How much does that govern our thoughts, feelings, actions, and beliefs? Where did we get this idea of perfection? Where did we get the idea of what perfection is, and where did we get the idea that somehow we need to be that? I want to know who is the first person that suggested that we need to be perfect. I would like to have a word with that person. But I don't know where they are, so instead I'm having a word with you. Check it out. I feel like the idea of perfection can be a good thing. Obviously, there are terms. The idea of imperfection, understanding what is involved, what takes up that space, that is something that's really cool. That is something that we can have a lot of fun with. So that's what I want to talk about today. I think I naturally, maybe not naturally, maybe it was conditioned into me, but right now I would consider myself by default somewhat of a perfectionist. I want to do things the right way. I want to get 100% on the test. I have a very high standard of how I think things should be, and I get upset when things don't work the way that they should. I get upset with every single piece of technology that I have. And when I explain what my grievance is to other people, they're like, "What? Like, I didn't even know that you could expect something like that out of a device." So I have high standards for myself, which translates to high standards of other people, which translates to a disappointment if I'm not careful. So that's something that I really need to work on, is getting out of the way of perfection. Perfection impedes my ability to be productive. And I think when we get obsessed with this idea of perfection, nothing ever becomes perfect, which then makes what we put out there far less than perfect. And when we see what other people put out and we compare ourselves to them, they seem far closer to perfect. I used to work in this, this is a kind of side note, but funny story. It sounds just weird. I lived in Huntsville, Alabama for a year. And I worked in a Japanese restaurant there. Not a lot of Japanese restaurants, like real authentic Japanese restaurants in Huntsville, Alabama. But they opened a Toyota plant there. There was a sister company called JPC that opened this restaurant. So a lot of the guys that were coming over setting up the plant would have a place to come and get real Japanese food. So I was the only American that was working in this restaurant for a while. And it was a blast. I had such a good time working in this restaurant. And I love Japanese food. So got to learn a lot about Japanese food, got to eat a lot of Japanese food, got to enjoy a lot of sake and Japanese whiskey. This is how long ago that was. But anyways, there's an expression that I learned. I learned like 4 phrases in Japanese in the year that I worked at this restaurant. And one of the phrases that I learned, and I hope that I don't just completely butcher it, but it goes, Saru mo kikara ochiru. And what that means is even monkeys fall from trees. Even monkeys fall from trees. I love that saying so much. Monkeys spend their day swinging around from branch to branch, playing in the trees. They do it their whole lives, and they still fall. There is no such thing as perfection, or what someone else defines as perfect and tries to imprint that definition on you. That is not right. We live in a world where there are literally impossible standards of beauty, of fitness, of wealth, of character. There are people, social media accounts, institutions, TV personalities that would have you think that they are real, that they are who they project themselves to be 24 hours a day. And that is just not true. No one is perfect. No one is better than you. No one is really even smarter than you. Sure, maybe somebody might have more education in one field, or may be able to solve problems in some way better than you. But it may have been Einstein, I don't know. Somebody said something to the effect of everyone is a genius in some way, and I believe that. One thing I can say is that everybody is a teacher. There is something that you can learn from everyone. And another thing I can say is that no one has all the answers. No one has all the answers. I heard once someone say that school is easy because the answers are in the book. And I like that, because you get a book, you get tested on the book. Well, you've been literally given all of the answers. Every single answer it lies within the pages of this book. And even having all of the answers in the palm of our hand, somehow, probably most of us will figure out a way to not know all of the answers. So even when we have the answers, no one has all the answers. And when it comes to life lessons, things that are not academic, things that don't just exist in a book, nobody has all the answers. So there's no reason to think that anyone does, or to put someone high up enough above us because we think that they have all the answers. Some people might have some answers. Most people have all, their own experiences. And like I said, everyone's a teacher. We can learn from their experiences. We can learn from them. We can learn from their character, but nobody is perfect. And nothing is perfect. That being said, if we can agree to not buy in to other institutional standards of perfection, but instead come up with our own ideas of perfection, And if you don't like the word perfection, what are we talking about? An idea? An ideal idea? So you can use the word ideal. But you have this idea of the way something should be. And then you have an assessment of maybe the way it is right now. And that's sort of that boundary, the lower limit of the imperfection. And it's that space in between those two things that is your playground. And that's what I want you to think about this week, is to go into the playground of imperfection and play around, roll in the sand, have some fun. And by doing that, it will take you closer to that idea that you came up with, that idea that you created of perfection. It will bring you closer to that ideal. And in the process of bringing you closer to that, it will stretch you and it will allow you to grow. It will allow you to be a better student, to learn more from other people. It would allow you to be more humble so that you are more open and able to learn from others. And it will allow you to also be a better teacher. So I hope that, let me see if I can try to explain this a little bit better in case this is somewhat confusing. But let's say you have, let's take a movement, right? Like a clean and jerk. You can go and you can watch a number of different lifters perform a clean and jerk. And at the really high level, if you are into weightlifting, at a really high level, you can see all the most elite lifters. There's a lot of variance in their technique, in the way that they perform a clean and jerk. And none of those might be the appropriate way or technique for you to implement on a clean and jerk. Personally, I love the Colombian team. The way that the Colombian style of clean and jerk, where they do this really like wide grip on the jerk, and it's so fast and it's just so beautiful. To me, I could argue like that looks perfect. But if I try to do a jerk that way, my shoulders do not like it. It does not work for me. It does not make sense. So my definition of the ideal might be a little different. And I would have to create something that works for me. And I can imagine it. I can imagine what it would look like. And I can imagine what it would feel like. And then I could set up on the bar and I could attempt a clean and jerk. I could warm up, build to something heavy, attempt a clean and jerk, and I could do that. Now, there would be some deviation between what I did and that ideal. And even if I wanted to use some elite lifter, there would be a variation between what I did and that elite lifter. So to get to that level from where I am right now, that is the playground. What is the first step that I would need to take in order to shrink the boundaries of my playground? Well, it depends. Maybe it's the setup on the bar. Maybe it's the bar path. Maybe it's the speed around the bar. It could be a lot of things. But suffice it to say, if I look at, well, where am I now and where is it that I'm trying to go, and this is all the space in between, this is my playground. This is the area in which I get to be uncomfortable and I get to make mistakes and I get to try new things, because this is the area where it's just slightly beyond my capability. as I get closer to what I think is perfect. If I were to go straight to that right now, it would be so far beyond my capability. It wouldn't really do anything. It might increase my risk of injury. It might be a detriment to my mindset. So instead, I want to focus on the thing that's like just 1% better, 2% better. What is it that's just barely beyond my level of capability? It's so close I can see it. I can reach out and I can almost touch it. That's the thing that I want to go for. And I want to keep trying for that and keep trying for that. And once I can grasp it and I can pull it closer to me, well, then guess what? My playground just shrunk a little bit. And then now I find a new thing that I get to have some fun with. And I get to try and I get to make mistakes and I get to fail because this is the playground of imperfection. So that is the action item for this week, is to build your playground, number one. And number two, over time, try to make your playground smaller and smaller and smaller. And once it gets so small that you can't play it in anymore, guess what? It's time to go build a new playground with something else. So, action item. Choose an activity or a skill that you want to explore and come up with your own definition. And it can be someone else's that you agree with, but don't just automatically buy into somebody else's definition. But come up with an idea and a visualization of perfection in that skill or activity. Try it out. Assess your own skills. That gives you the borders of your playground. Where are you now and what is the ideal? And inside those borders, ask yourself, what is the first action that I need to take? What is it that I can do right now that's going to make my playground 1% smaller? And once I have gotten that thing done, my playground, this particular playground, is never going to expand again. It's only going to get smaller and smaller and smaller from here. So some examples. Obviously, we're a fitness company, so fitness, movement, nutrition are kind of really good go-tos. But if you have hobbies like baking or cooking, you could definitely... I watched one episode of the Great British Bake Off one time, and then the next minute I was in the kitchen making sponges, like sponge cakes. And I made a couple of pretty good cakes, to be honest. Far from perfect, but when you're dealing with butter and sugar and that kind of thing, you don't have to be perfect. Anyways, let's take like a movement skill, like a handstand. So we know what a freestanding handstand hold should look like. Your joints are stacked, your feet together, toes are pointed. It's beautiful. We've all seen the gymnasts do it. There's a reason why gymnastics is so popular at the Olympics, because it's incredible. It's incredible. So we have an idea of what a handstand should look like. And then if you're like me and you try a freestanding handstand, it's far from it. So that's a great way to define your playground, your skills versus the ideal. Skills, the imperfect versus the perfect. So then what's the first thing I could do? Well, maybe I could try to kick up to a handstand and be able to touch my toes together every single time I attempt. Once I can do that, well, maybe it's stacking the joints, making sure all my joints, ankles, knees, hips, shoulders, elbows, everything's stacked vertically. Even if it's just for a split second, but every time I kick up, touch my toes together, I can stack my joints vertically. Cool. Next thing, what can I do? Well, maybe I could focus on my breathing. If I'm holding my breath in a handstand, it's going to be hard to hold it for a while. It's going to be hard to hold the handstand for a while. So maybe I focus on my breath. And then this might dial things back a little bit. But if you focus on your breath, practice taking a breath while you're up there, well, then you might stay up there for longer. Now, how can you take a breath and keep the core engagement at a level where it needs to be so that those joints stay stacked? Well, then that's maybe the next step. I don't know for you, but that's just kind of an example. Clean eating. That's a tricky one. Because first of all, okay, we have an idea of what's perfect, right? Perfect is perfect adherence to whatever nutrition plan that you're on. Assuming that nutrition plan is something that's safe, something that is healthy. It's perfect adherence to that nutrition plan. If it's a pretty strict plan, well, perfect, unless it's your job, like you have to go step on a stage, you're getting paid $20 million for an action movie, you're literally selling your image, which is probably not a good idea, not something that I would advocate, but those are things where, okay, 100% perfect adherence to this nutrition plan is probably what's necessary. But for most of us who are just trying to be healthy, who are trying to look good, who are trying to feel good, trying to, be able to keep up with our kids or play some recreational sports, maybe hit a PR on a lift, 100% clean, perfect adherence to any nutrition plan is not super realistic, and it's not even super necessary. You can have that little treat once in a while. But you know what perfect is, and you can probably get a little bit closer to that. So what do you need to do? You need to assess your skills. You do that by tracking everything that's going into your body for a period of time. I would suggest a week. Track everything that's going into your body for a week. Track the times that it's going. And then you'll be like, oh, wow, I really seem to do bad at lunch. Or maybe it's like the weekend. Or maybe it's Thursday, Friday nights. But there will be a pattern in there. You can look for patterns, you can notice patterns, and then you can see, okay, lunchtime, that's where I need to put my focus. How can I prepare myself so that I can eat better at lunchtime? Prepare my meals. Change who I'm spending time with at lunch. That kind of thing. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can use for this. There's morning routines. What is the perfect morning routine? What can you do to get closer to that? Your bedtime routine is huge. I think that's what I'm going to choose for the week. Another really great one, especially right now, if we're spending a lot more time at home, would be relationship. What is the perfect relationship? Don't buy into someone else's definition of that, because what you see on TV, what you see on social media, what you see out there anywhere is not what's really going on. It's not. So come up with your own definition of what a perfect relationship is. And I can tell you right now that my definition of a perfect relationship is not one where we never disagree. I like to disagree sometimes. I like to argue sometimes. It helps me expand my perspective on things. It helps me think about stuff that I might not normally think about, or look at things from a different angle. I like that. One of the things I love about Carolina is that she challenges me to grow and to expand my comfort zone, expand my way of thinking. So come up with your own idea of what that is. What would be perfection in your relationship? And then what is one thing that you can do to get a little bit closer to that? And usually it has to do with spending quality time together. Maybe you're working out together. Maybe you write little notes to each other. Maybe you're going to write her a little note, him, her, it, a dog, a little note. I was going to say a dog. Maybe it's writing a little note to them every day and putting it somewhere. Maybe it is having a meal with 0 devices. Maybe you're still continuing the no gossiping from last week. But one active thing that you could do to improve that relationship. Think about that. Shrink up that little playground. Have fun with this. And please share with me what it is that you decided to do, because I'm excited to hear about it and I really enjoy hearing from you. So we'll leave it at that. Build your playground, make it as small as possible, then go build another playground. Thank you so much for tuning in. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.